coming to your journey, Arjun, interestingly, both of us Cathedralites.
Yes.
Right? And after that, you went to Dhirubhai, and then went to Brown University, did your BA in International Relations, Affairs and Economics, and you were also part of Omicron, Delta, Epsilon. Both of us were part of it. Very interesting to finally meet somebody else, at least.
Who knows what Omicron,
Yeah,
Delta, Epsilon
exactly.
is.
And we talked about a bunch of things you did in the US. But interestingly, right after you graduated from Brown, you didn't stay back. You came back to India. Why was that?
Yeah, honestly, I knew a conscious decision to
Achha.
come back to India. So look, I knew when I went to the US as well that long term I would be back in India for two reasons. One, I'm very patriotic, and so I feel like even if I'm never going to get into the non-profit service government sector, I don't see myself ever being in that space. But even if I'm in the for-profit space, I feel like we have opportunity that other people in our country don't have, right? We have exposure, we have access to knowledge, we have access to information, access to foreign education, which less than 1% of our country has. So it's our job to come back and add some value to the economy. It may not be in the more cliched service side, and that's not for me, and I'm very honest and open about it. But that was one reason. The second reason was honestly like, I saw the writing on the wall as well, right? That this is where the opportunity is. If you spend time in developed markets, you realize that all the problems are solved or almost solved, right? But here in India, there's so much left to be solved, to be done. And I think there was one more realization which happened because I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My dada was in some way, he was a doctor, but in some way he ran his own clinic and his own business. My dad runs his own business as well. And I realized the nuance of doing business in India, the way to do business in India is very different from anywhere else in the world, right? So my dad used to keep saying, if you go for 4 years to the US, and I went to Brown and it was the best 4 years of my life. Outstanding experience, great 4 years, had the best time of my life, made the best friends, studied a little bit, but had great out of class experiences as well. And so he said, you're going to have those 4 years in the US. You're going to love your time there. Then you're going to work 2-3 years in the US. Then you're going to do an MBA for 2 years. You come back to India 8 years later, 9 years later, you're an NRI boss. You are going to take a lot of time to adjust. So why waste those 9 years? Come back after 4 years and actually start work, right? And so I feel like a lot of my friends at that time stayed back in the US 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever that time period is. But 90% of them are back now.
I see.
It was a number like 80% or of 75% stayed. But now most of those guys have come back to India across from 2013 when I came back to 14, 15, 16 to now, right? Over various waves, people came back. There was visa issues in the US. Those people moved to the UK. There was visa issues in the UK. Those people came back to India, etc.
They didn't try Canada.
Through all those waves, whoever had to come back came back. Now, when they came back, they had to figure out how it was to live in India again. Right. One of my brother-in-laws actually came back to India after 12, 13 years. And it gets to you, right? The pollution, the traffic, the
slowness, I think, in many things.
Chaos. For me, there's excitement in all of this. Like, I am unperturbed by traffic. I am unperturbed by noise outside my house. Like, there is metro work going on outside my house. But I'm immune to that noise. I don't even hear. No, I don't even hear the noise anymore. Some people come to me and say like, how do you manage? How does your kid manage with all this noise? I'm unperturbed. I don't care. People are like, you're a runner. Where do you run? I'm like, on the road, on the street, outside. What about the pollution? What about the heat? No, I'm unperturbed, right? So I think that head start I had onto living in India, doing business in India, understanding the way, like, when I was working in private equity after I finished college, and then I started my own company, I remember going to my dad like 3 months and saying, hey, I started this company and all, but I can't launch my product. He's like, why, what happened? I'm like, I don't have plastic bottles. I have my product ready, I have my capsules ready, but no one's giving me plastic bottles. He's like, what do you mean, just call them? I'm like, yeah, I went to an India Mart, I found 10 vendors, I emailed all them, nobody's replying to me, what do I do? He said, dude, pick up the phone, call them, send them a WhatsApp, and if it doesn't work, show up at the office. And I was like, no, come on. This is not real, right? Like, this doesn't work. He's like, chal, I'll do it for you. He said, give me the vendor's number from India Mart. He called the vendor at 8 p.m. and said, मैं कल आ रहा हूँ, bottle चाहिए. And he took me there to the bottle vendor. We sat down, then we closed the deal there. And that is when I realized actually that traditional way of what we did in the West and what we did in our
Email se
final
kaam ho
job.
jayega.
Email bhejo, aa jayega reply, 3 ghante mein chalao. No. So in Dr. Vaidya's actually there was a thing, if someone came to me and said, yeah, I followed up with an email and nothing's happening, not acceptable. You followed up with an email, written a WhatsApp, written to the guy on LinkedIn, called the guy and sent him an SMS, then it's a follow-up. While we hear a lot of people who say there's lots wrong with our country, and I'm not saying that we are a perfect, we are a finished product, right?
Correct.
Still a work in progress. But after seeing that time, you really appreciate what we see around us today, right?
And exactly my point, right? I think in many ways, the people that are coming back today, and we've just hired a few people that are joining us from the US, and I've already started shipping them books saying, listen, before you get here, read the Companies Act. Before you get here, understand the AIF Act, understand all the changes that have happened. So you start understanding that this is not a finished product, like you say, and that you're not going to come here and set the world ablaze right away. There's going to be a huge and a steep learning curve between the US and UK markets in India. And it's not going to be emails and founders or even legal professionals being reasonable, because that's not what they're used to. They're not used to the kind of culture you come from. So you have to get used to what it takes to do business in India, but we'll get there.
But I'll tell you, I had a very close friend of mine, Lucas Davies. He went to Brown with me undergrad. His dad worked for one of the UN agencies, I think it was the World Food Program. And so he's born in Delhi. He's a half Danish, half American guy who grew up in Africa. But parents are American, so he was pretty American when we were in college at least. And then he got a job at Mahindra after college. And he spent 2013 to 16 in India. And then eventually he went back to the US, worked for a fund, did his MBA, etc. all of that. And was working in Goldman in New York. And we had a friend's wedding in January in Bangalore from college. And so he came down for the wedding as well. And he was back in Bombay, I think after my wedding in 2018. So it's been for him 5 years. And he said, the city is the same. The places are the same or similar. But I saw two massive changes. There is massive infrastructure and construction. And Bombay has a skyline. And it truly has a skyline, right? We've lived here all our lives, and so it just sprung up around us. But sometimes when you look out your window, like, is this my city? Like, is this where I live?
If you're driving back on Bandra Worli ceiling, you can see the
Atal Setu.
Yeah.
Atal Setu. If you come back to Bombay via Atal Setu, you see the skyline, right? You're like, wow. And then he said one very interesting thing. He said, there is so much, and he was here for 2 nights before we went to Bangalore. He said, there is so much opportunity I see in this place. You can literally shake this city and money will come out of it. And that is really, while there is lots of chaos, I think navigating the chaos and finding the calm as well as the opportunity in the chaos, that's the secret sauce to most successful people in India. Because if everything is set and everything is complete, then what else is there to do?
And then you're going to get subpar returns, right?
Correct.
Yeah.